to let you know about and for future meetings. We may seem to be skipping around a bit, but we're really not. There is a method to our apparent disorder, and that is we want to set the stage for the transition from Islam to the twin manifestations of the Bab and Baha'u'llah. And so to do that, we need to establish an overview of exactly what we're transitioning to, and that will become clear later. So tonight we're focusing on the inviolability of the covenant of Baha'u'llah as compared to the covenants we've already studied. So in other words, we're going to be going back and forth in time as we discuss these various subjects. So tonight we're going to look at the links in the covenant. This is a good metaphor because the covenant is like a chain. If any link breaks, then the chain is gone. The covenant is often described in the writings as a cord between God and us, that we cling on to that cord. It's a nice image, isn't it? And of course, we saw as soon as the link between Muhammad and Ali was broken, it was forever doomed, even though you had the links from Ali to the other successive 11 other imams. And we're going to look at that and how it hooks up with the proclamation of the Bab, who proclaims himself not only as the gate to Baha'u'llah, but also as the return of the 12th Imam, the Qaim, the Mahdi, and so on. And so we'll be going back and forth with some of this. So if it if it seems like we've sort of left the continuity of our historical overview in the dust, we really haven't. We're just going to get a little more relaxed with how we're doing this, rather not so much as a linear direction of the course, but skipping around different things. So next week we'll probably be dealing more with the another concept that's a favorite of mine, which is knowledge and action as it's borne out through the administrative order. Something that will become apparent, I hope, after I give that one. So let me turn on the PowerPoint for tonight, and we'll start. Let me see if I can start here from the beginning. And this will be hopefully relatively short, so we'll have plenty of time for discussion, because this is a tremendously important topic, the covenant of Baha'u'llah. The first thing I wanted to do is make up for a mistake I made last week when I was asked if Baha'u'llah had appointed any hands, and I looked at the source of all knowledge, Wikipedia, and there, if you look up hands of the cause, you'll see, yes, Baha'u'llah appointed 4 of them, and here they are. And I'm not going to pronounce their names very well, but one of them, the first one, called Haji Akum, is pictured here, and this is the one I was referring to. That he looks, number one, he looks totally comfortable, even though if you look at his right foot is in a wooden stock, and there's a tremendously heavy chain around his neck, which means he's been arrested again. The story goes that he used to just, when something bad would happen and the Baha'is were being persecuted again, he would just sit in his front room in a chair waiting for him to come arrested. And he was fearless as he looks. And so incredible man, incredible story about him. So what was the fate of the previous covenants? Just to review very quickly, though we've spent the whole of the course so far, 22 classes going over that. But first, let's deal with the term inviolable, because we are saying that as opposed to all the previous covenants, the covenant of Baha'u'llah is inviolable. And it means secure from violation or profanation, secure from assault or trespass, unassailable, meaning it can't be broken. The chains, in other words, the links in that chain are now secure. So we saw how close Islam came to having its covenant secure. It only missed one link, Oh, well, we don't know for sure that the other links would have been broken because all the imams were killed, but at any rate, it's conceivable you had everything there in place for the will and administrative order that no doubt the imams would have carried out in furthering what Muhammad had produced with the Ummah and the other laws that he had um, uh, put in the Quran and so on. So we looked at Judaism, and overall that covenant was relatively secure. We saw that from God to Moses, and then after Moses, remember that we had the violation of his covenant when he was up on Mount Sinai receiving the tablets. So when he came back, they had, after 40 days up there, they had rebelled. Again, they had just come out of slavery, and they sort of regressed and went back to worshiping Baal, the golden calf. And so they carried the tablets in the ark, not the ones he threw down and broke at disgust at them, but the ones that he went back up on the mountain and became inspired and wrote them in his own hand. And those were the ones that were placed in an ark that they carried with them as sort of the Qibla. Well, not sort of, it was the Qibla, the point of adoration, wherever they went, so they could build a temple anywhere they went. Christianity, of course, Christ, as we've seen, left very few instructions about, he said, on this rock, referring to Peter, I will build my church, but he didn't describe that church or how it would be erected and so on. And so you have these various arguments between Peter and Paul regarding what rules should be imposed on the newly converted Christians, particularly the Gentiles. But so Christianity doesn't have, in its pure form, doesn't have a very long lifespan, but it wasn't meant to be. It was, as I understand it. Islam, of course, as we just said, had everything spelled out in detail, laws, guidance for the ongoing evolution of the faith with the imams, but it was effectively shattered when his covenant was blatantly broken purposefully by the covenant breaker Umar. Now, what does the term covenant breaker mean? So we need to deal with that, because that term is not only important in understanding what happened in Islam, but also at every link in the chain of the covenant of Baha'u'llah, there are attempts to shatter that link, to break that covenant. And you need to know about that history, and we will get to that, though not this evening, but we will later. So what is a covenant breaker? It's not simply an enemy of the faith. So for example, the arch enemy, or the Antichrist, as he's called, of the Baha'i faith is Syed Muhammad of Isfahan, who was not a Babi. He was the one who sort of coerced or enticed Mirza Yahya to do the things he did. But a covenant breaker is someone like Mirza Yahya, who is, if you will, I was going to say a signatory, it's not a written document, but who has pledged allegiance to the covenant. It was declared his belief and is among the faithful. Only it doesn't turn out to be so faithful. So someone, this is my own definition, someone who is a believer, a member of the faithful, one who has pledged allegiance to the covenant, but who most often for reasons of greed or seeking power attempts to undermine the legitimate institution, successor, or foundational laws established by the founder or manifestation. And of course, it can be very blatant or it can be very subtle. Mirza Yahya, of course, has someone try to kill Baha'u'llah, and then he himself poisons Baha'u'llah in Adrianople, but we'll get to that later in our course. So what are the various types of covenants? And we mentioned this very early in our classes, but it needs repeating. And I'm going here in a sort of hierarchical order. You've got the eternal covenant of God, and that's the covenant between God and man that he will never leave us without guidance, without a manifestation for the period of time in which we live. So
Oh, Dr. Hadrick, I think if we just have you unmute yourself for a second there.
Oh, okay. The covenant, of course, is an agreement between two parties. And so that's God's agreement that I will give you this in return for which you will recognize these manifestations and follow their guidance. So beneath the, or secondary to the eternal covenant is the greater covenant. And that is even, it doesn't mean it's greater than the eternal covenant, but there's a greater covenant and a lesser covenant. The greater covenant is the agreement between the manifestation and his followers, that they will accept and follow the succeeding manifestation. And the lesser covenant is the succession appointed by the manifestation, in the same way Muhammad appointed Ali, so Baha'u'llah appoints Abdul-Baha. And it also includes the laws and institutions of the manifestation and his appointed successor. Now, we're going to back up for just a second, because now we're going to start the links in the chain of the covenant from the Bab to Baha'u'llah and to the House of Justice. But we start by picking up, and again, as I said, we'll go back and forth. So we left off with what happened to Shia Islam. Well, insofar as the Imams are concerned, Ali was assassinated. The second, Hassan, his son, was poisoned. Hussein was killed famously at Karbala, which was the shrine there, and that's where the Bab was worshiping at that shrine and in Karbala. And one night in a dream, he had the dream that he sipped the blood from the severed head of the Imam Hussein. And that was when he got the first intimations of his mission. His son was poisoned. And again, these are being poisoned by the caliphate, or if not by the caliphs themselves, by people appointed by them to poison them. So every one of them was killed except for the 12th Imam, who's called the hidden Imam. And we'll get to that in some detail, but that's called the occultation. And the fact is that realizing what had happened to the previous Imams, he hid away and he communicated with the faithful through certain intermediaries, and they're called by different names. One of them is Babs. They were called Babs, or gates to the hidden Imam. So the Bab is Qaim. This is the statement that we've read before, where the Bab, when he is being examined, which means he's being, in effect, this is the closest thing he has to a trial. When first he is, of course, taken to Mahku, and then Sharik, and then he is taken to Tabriz, where he appears before the then prince, who would become Nasiruddin Shah, and several clerics, and they ask him, okay, who exactly do you claim to be? And he says, he exclaimed, I am the promised one. I am the one whose name you have for 1,000 years invoked, at whose mention you have risen, whose advent you have longed to witness, and the hour of whose revelation you have prayed to God to hasten. Verily I say, it is incumbent upon the peoples of both the East and West to obey my word, and to pledge allegiance to my person. He goes on, but you can imagine what impact that the words of this lowly prisoner before them, and so young at that, had on the the panel of dignitaries. If you'll also remember, and we'll again go back over this later, that there was one room, seat in the room which was supposed to be for the prince and or the head of the panel, whoever that was, and Bob sat there instead. So he wasn't shy about saying who he was, and who he is referring to here is the 12th Imam. I am the return of the 12th Imam. So it's been exactly 1,000 years since the 12th Imam was last heard from, as it were. Now, the first half of this book, of my most recent book, God's Plan for Planet Earth, discusses in detail what we're going to go over very briefly tonight. And that is, it discusses the links in the covenant of Baha'u'llah. And then in the latter parts of the book, it shows what has happened since those links became completed. That is, since the House of Justice was put in place or elected in 1963. So a lot has happened since 1963 in the administrative order. And that's what the book talks about. Bringing us all the way to the contemporary period of the last 20 years of the Institute process. But the first part of it is going over this right here, the links in the chain of the covenant of Baha'u'llah. The links in the chain are from the Bab to Baha'u'llah, from Baha'u'llah to Abdul Baha, from Abdul Baha to Shoghi Effendi, from Shoghi Effendi to the hands of the cause in the Holy Land, and from the hands of the cause to the Universal House of Justice. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 links. So let's go over them in sequence. First, before we get to those, and this is one thing we'll discuss time after next when we get to the declaration of the Bab and the events that precede the declaration of the Bab. That'll be a very exciting class, because there's so much visual, the beautiful room where the Bab declared himself to Mullah Hussein. Sheikh Ahmad and Sayyid Kazim, these are two people who appeared right before the Bab declared. Sheikh Ahmad was the founder of the Shaikhi movement, and it was his claim that he had spiritual communication with the 12 Imams, and that his guidance derived from their inspiration. And he said, there will appear a Qaim and a Qayyum. And the Qaim, of course, is the Bab, and the Qayyum is a reference to one who is greater, Baha'u'llah. Sayyid Kazim was his most important student, and the followers of Sheikh Ahmad followed Sayyid Kazim, who was the one who taught Tahireh, who taught Mullah Hussein, and also in his class, unbeknown to those who were there, was the Bab himself. But we'll get to that later. The importance of them is not that they're the two twin trumpet blasts, they're not. The Sheikh Ahmad and Sayyid Kazim are what Baha'u'llah discusses, and we will discuss in another class. The twin stars, Baha'u'llah says in the Kitab-i-Gun, they're always heavenly or celestial signs of the coming of the manifestation. And then there are human, perfect men, he says, that are signs as well. So you have two stars that appear in the heavens, and then you have these two individuals who are precursors to announce the advent of the two or the twin manifestations. The twin trumpet blast, which we'll get to later, are none of the are part of this fulfillment of Islamic prophecy, and we'll get to the surah that talks about there will be a trumpet blast in which will render everyone dumbfounded and basically in a swoon. And then there'll be a second trumpet blast which will awaken the world. Well, the first trumpet blast, as we will see, is Tahireh's announcement, which effectively is that this is not just a purification movement or an advancement in Islam. This is a new revelation, the Bab, at the conference at Badash, she does that. So that's the first trumpet blast. And the second is the declaration of Baha'u'llah in the Garden of Rizwan. The resurrection, again, what does that mean? Well, of course, it's referred to in throughout the Quranic writings, also in the Old Testament and New Testament. And there is the resurrection, which is the appearance of the Bab, and then what's called the latter resurrection, which is the appearance of Baha'u'llah. Both these terms are mentioned in the Kitab-i-Igan. So first link, the Bab's declaration as the gate. And this is the declaration that he makes to Mullah Hussein on the night of May 23rd, 1844. And he says, "O thou who art the first to believe in me, verily I say, I am the Bab, the gate of God, and thou art the Baha'u'llah, the gate of that gate." Now this he says after he's rendered various proofs proving that he is the gate. And we'll get to those when we go over the declaration of the Bab. One of the links from the Bab to Baha'u'llah, and this is not known of a great deal, that is, it's not mysterious, it's in God Passes By, in the Persian Bayan, and this is a quote from Shoghi Effendi, and I'm citing it from the Kitab-i-Aqdas, but it's in a note in the Kitab-i-Aqdas. In the Persian Bayan, the Bab states, "Well is it with him who fixeth his gaze upon the order of Baha'u'llah and render thanks unto his Lord. For he will assuredly be made manifest. God hath indeed irrevocably ordained it in the Bayan." And then the note goes on to say, Shoghi Effendi identifies this order that is alluded to by the Bab with the system Baha'u'llah envisages in the Aqdas, which is the Baha'i administrative order, in which he testifies to its revolutionizing effect on the life of humanity and reveals the laws and principles which govern its operation. So that's a link from the Bab to Baha'u'llah. There are numerous others. The letters of the Bab in the book Selections from the Writings of the Bab, where he writes, well, we'll look at those later, but suffice it to say there are a number of allusions to Baha'u'llah in those letters. And then there's also the symbolic act when he is about to be executed. The Bab entrusts his pen and other belongings to his secretary, who is told to give them to Baha'u'llah. Now, this is a statement by Baha'u'llah talking to, among other things, the people of the Bayan, which means those who are following the Bab, when him whom God will make manifest, the one that the Bab prophesied would be the greater manifestation, is made manifest. And so in this incredible passage, Baha'u'llah goes through each of the religions and say, Jews, if you once again want to crucify Jesus, here I am. If you want to slay Muhammad, seize me and put an end to my life, for I am he and myself is his self. Incredible. So let me read this whole thing, if you will. It's rather remarkable. And it goes on to a second page here where he talks to the people of the Bayan and say, if you want to kill me the way the Bab was killed, then don't follow me or rebel against me, which some of them did. So let me take a sip of tea and see if I can read this as eloquently as possible. O Jews, if you be intent on crucifying once again Jesus, the Spirit of God, put me to death, for he hath once more in my person been made manifest unto you. Deal with me as you wish, For I have vowed to lay down my life in the path of God. I will fear no one, though the powers of earth and heaven be leagued against me. Followers of the gospel, if ye cherish the desire to slay Mohammed, the apostle of God, seize me and put an end to my life, for I am he, and myself is his self. Do unto me as ye like, for the deepest longing of mine heart is to attain the presence of my best beloved in his kingdom of glory. Such is the divine decree, if you know it, followers of Muhammad. If it be your wish to riddle with your shafts the breast of him who causeth his book, the Bayan, to be sent down unto you, lay hands on me and persecute me. Now I misread that. As you can see, the followers of Muhammad, the next one should be, O followers of Muhammad, if it be your wish to riddle your shafts with your shafts, the breast of him who caused his book of the Bayan to be sent down unto you, lay hands on me and persecute me, for I am his well-beloved, the revelation of his own self, though my name be not his name. I have come in the shadows of the clouds of glory and am invested by God with invincible sovereignty. He verily is the truth, the knower of things unseen. I verily anticipate from you the treatment you have accorded unto him that came before me. To this all things verily witness, if ye be of those who hearken. O people of the Bayan, and again, these are the followers of the Bab, who have not yet recognized Baha'u'llah. If ye have resolved to shed the blood of him whose coming the Bab hath proclaimed, whose advent Muhammad hath prophesied, and whose revelation Jesus Christ himself hath announced, behold me standing ready and defenseless before you. Deal with me after your own desires. Very, very powerful. So the third link is the link from Baha'u'llah to Abdul-Baha. And this, of course, is, well, I say, of course, I'm sorry, I shouldn't presume that you've read this, but this is the Kitabi, the Book of the Covenant. Also, it's called the Will and Testament of Baha'u'llah. And that's why he says this divine testator, this is his testament. The will of the divine testator is this: it is incumbent upon the Agsan, the Afnan, and my kindred to turn one and all their faces towards this most mighty branch. Consider that which we have revealed in our most holy book. Now, what he's talking about here is the most mighty branch is Abdul-Baha. The mightier branch is Subi Azal or Mirza Yahya. Excuse me, I'm sorry, is Mirza Hussein Ali, Mirza Ali Muhammad. And so he's in designating Abdul-Baha here, and he says, we've already mentioned this in the Agdas. Now, the importance of this is this will and testament was written by Abdul-Baha his last year of his life in his own hand, but 20 years earlier in 1873, in the Most Holy Book, in the Agdas, he had already designated Abdul-Baha as his successor. And this is the quote that he is quoting from the Agdas: when the ocean of my presence hath ebbed and the book of my revelation is ended, turn your faces toward him whom God hath purposed, who hath branched from this ancient root. The object of this sacred verse is none other except the most mighty branch, Abdul-Baha. Thus have we graciously revealed unto you our potent will, and I am verily the gracious, the all-powerful. Now we go to the fourth link. What is the link between Abdul-Baha and Shoghi Effendi? And that is in the document, the Will and Testament of Abdul-Baha, where he not only creates the position or the station of the guardianship, but he designates Shoghi Effendi here as being the first of those guardians. O my loving friends, after the passing away of this wrong one, it is incumbent upon the Agsan, the branches, the Afnan, the twigs, of the sacred lote tree. Now, these are the descendants of Baha'u'llah and the Bab. And so the sacred lote tree is the symbol of the manifestation. The hands are pillars of the cause and the loved ones of the Abha beauty to turn unto Shoghi Effendi, the youthful branch from the two hollowed and sacred lote trees. And that is, he is both a descendant of the Bab and Baha'u'llah, and there's a family tree that he includes. I believe it's, I think it's in the, it's an inset in the Dawnbreakers, but I'm not, I know it's part of it there. I'm not sure it shows his connection. He is the sign of God, the chosen branch, the guardian of the cause of God, he unto whom all the Agsan, the Afnan, the hands of the cause, and his loved ones must turn. He is the interpreter of the word of God, and after him will succeed his firstborn of his lineal descendants. Now, there's more to this than that, insofar as what the requirements were for the next guardian. And we'll get to that in another much later class, because that is another important challenge to that link in the covenant. Hands of the cause of God. This is in the will and testament where the Abdu'l-Baha, of course, as we've seen, the hands of the cause already existed, but their duties and mission and function had not been spelled out. Here he tells them exactly what their duties are. And I'm not going to read this except to say that they should follow the guardian. He appoints them. They're under his shadow and obey his command. Their job is to diffuse the divine fragrance, to edify the souls of men, to promote learning, to improve the character of all men, and to be at all times and under all conditions sanctified and detached from earthly things. And it goes on to say they must be manifest, chaste, and holy conduct in their words and deeds. But they also have another function we'll get to when we study this link in detail, which is they had to approve the choice of the guardian for his successor. So they had a very strategic function. And later they have an even more strategic function. And this is the link where once the guardian dies in 1957, the hands of the cause are designated by the guardian to have the authority to appoint, not to appoint, but to, at the end of the 10-year World Crusade in 1963, to elect the members of the House of Justice. So that's the six, or I only had 5 listed on that chart, but this is the 6th link in the chain, because really the first, the Declaration of the Bab, is not a link in the chain of Baha'u'llah's covenant. It's really a link between Islam and the Declaration of the Bab. Well, a couple of more things and we'll be through, but one of the things that is important is the documents that secure this. Well, we've already seen that the Kitab-i-Ahd, the Book of the Covenant, is one strategic document linking Baha'u'llah to Abdu'l-Baha. The Will and Testament of Abdu'l-Baha links Abdu'l-Baha to Shoghi Effendi, Shoghi Effendi to the hands of the cause, and the Tablet of Carmel is what's called a charter document because it designates the place where the administrative headquarters of the Baha'i faith will be constructed on Mount Carmel. And this Baha'u'llah revealed on Mount Carmel after he had shown Abdu'l-Baha during, I think, his last visit to the mountain, that is Baha'u'llah's last visit, exactly where the Shrine of the Bab should be built and where the other edifices would be built as well as in the future, he designated a spot where a Baha'i house of worship would be built on the very promontory of the mountain. All glory be to this day, and this is a portion of the Tablet of Carmel. All glory be to this day, the day in which the fragrance of mercy hath been wafted over all created things, a day so blessed that past ages and centuries can never hope to rival it, a day in which the countenance of the Ancient of Days hath turned towards his holy seat. Thereupon the voices of all created things, and beyond them those of the concourse on high, were heard calling aloud, Haste thee, O Carmel! For lo, the light of the countenance of God, the ruler of the kingdom of names and the fashioner of the heavens, hath been lifted upon thee. And so we have other charter documents that can also be considered covenantal documents, of course, in some respect. This is the will and testament of Abdu'l-Baha. This is his tablets of the divine plan, which the Guardian designates as a charter document. This institutes and instigates the further teaching plans and overshadows them all. This is another charter document, the dispensation of Baha'u'llah, where you can see I've got written down there 1934. That's when it was written by Shoghi Effendi. Spells out the unfolding of now dispensation or era is the length of the dispensation or ministry of Baha'u'llah, which Baha'u'llah himself says will last not fewer than 1,000 years, so at least 1,000 years. And so this is Shoghi Effendi's description of that dispensation. Then you have another, I'm not sure this is properly called a charter document, but I'm calling it so tonight for our purposes. This is the declaration of trust and bylaws of the National Assemblies and the local spiritual assemblies. Now, it was originally devised with the help of the Guardian by the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States, but it was utilized for all the further national assemblies that were formed. And the same thing with the bylaws for the local assemblies of all the local assemblies throughout the world. So when you look at your bylaws, they are to be enduring. This is a more recent document because the counselors, the institution of the counselors was created when it became clear that the function of the hands of the cause needed to be continued, even though there could be no more hands of the cause appointed because the Guardian had deceased. And so the institution of the counselors was instigated. And this is the charter document, or the description of the functions and the parameters of the authority of the counselors. And so what you end up all together with the administrative order is this. The little lines designate different things. I think I've shown you this before. But you have then these twin pillars, if you will, upholding the institutions, the institution of the learned and the institution of the rulers. So this institution, or the institutions on this pillar, are for advice and assistance to these institutions. And these are executive institutions that can execute authority. And you have this same thing at the top level. So in other words, with the manifestation, he is both the exemplar, the source of learning, and he's also the source of authority. With Abdu'l-Baha, you had the same thing. He was the exemplar, and he was also had authority to run the institutions of the faith. After him, you have the Guardian, who had the infallible authority insofar as interpreting the text was concerned, and then the House of Justice, which is executive, creates, institutes laws, creates other agencies, and so on. So we'll go over this later, but these lines indicate some of them are communication and some of them are authority. So these thick lines are lines of authority. So the House of Justice has authority over the national assemblies, and the national assemblies have authority over the local assemblies, and so on. The International Teaching Center directs the counselors. in the various continents, and they in turn have auxiliary board members under them who have in turn assistants under them. The assistants help the LSAs, the auxiliary board members are helping the LSAs, the counselors help the NSAs. Well, I've got a new ending slide because I was dealing with this in another context and it thrilled me. The Harami Agdas and the Qibla. Now the Qibla is what we've been looking at, which is the shrine of the burial place of Baha'u'llah. But the Harami Agdas means the most holy sanctuary or precincts, which is designated by the Guardian as the northwestern quadrant of the gardens at Baji, immediately around and enclosing the shrine of Baha'u'llah, the Qibla. It was designated and constructed by Shoghi Effendi with 5 gates and 9 paths. So let me show it to you. Here is the Qibla itself here, the little brown building there. That's a simple building, is the shrine of Baha'u'llah. And then you have the 5 paths, the 5 gates, gate here, 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 and over here. And then you have the 9 paths, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, 8, 9. Isn't that beautiful, though? And if you go there, you will, of course, bask in the beauty of that place. It is a life-changing experience. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Well, stop sharing this. I'll still share with you. Okay. We're going, as I say, be a little less stringent and formal in the development of our historical overview of things. So we're going to bounce around a bit, but we're still going to go from a wide perspective to a narrow perspective. We're going to start off with an overview of Baha'i history, and then we'll focus on some particular events. We'll go back and forth. And then eventually we'll get to particular texts and so on.